reason together, that's what God says.
Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord.
That was just the introduction. Nature of man is threefold. The will. Oh, let's read the Spirit Prophecy quote to deal with that. Steps to Christ, page 47, paragraph 1. Now, ask yourself as I read this: is this speaking about you? Have you asked this question? Okay. Many are inquiring. So ask yourself: have you ever inquired this of yourself or of God? Many are inquiring, how am I to make the surrender of myself to God? You don't have to answer publicly, but think about it. How am I to surrender myself to God? You desire to give yourself to Him, but you are weak in moral power. Where's moral power? Moral is the will. Yeah, so we'll put it up here. Moral. You're weak in moral power because this is what? A bully. Yeah? So when the bully says, do what I tell you to do, you're going to end up doing it. Yeah? You desire to give yourself to Him, but you are weak in moral power, in slavery to doubt. So are we all slaves? I don't mean maybe not in this room we're all slaves, but generally as humanity, we're all slaves. What are we slaves to? What's our boss's name? In slavery to doubt. What's our boss's name? Doubt. So, here's Mr. Doubt. And here you are. And he's got a big stick. And you live in this house here. Yeah? And there's a road here. And there's another property here. And this one's beautiful. Who lives here? Jesus. And you want to move from this house to this house. And be a slave in this house. Yeah? But you can't escape. Who's stopping you? He's going to stop you. He's going to say, you can't escape from me. And you say, I think I'm going to go AWOL. Do you call it AWOL here? Absent without leave at night. You can jump over the wall and go into his house. But every time you sort of think about that, he knows what you're thinking. He says, you know, if you try that, you won't be able to get over the wall. This wall's so high. And besides, even if you manage to get through all of that, when you get there, he won't even like you. He won't accept you. Why wouldn't he accept you? Because you've got all this bad history. You look ugly, you smell. You've got all these problems. Look how nice and clean this property is. Besides, he's got many slaves already. He doesn't need any extra help. So doubt is going to bring all of these things to you, and you're going to end up believing it, and you're going to stay captive to doubt. So most people in this world are in slavery to doubt. And they can't believe not only the goodness of God, that it's actually not difficult to jump over, in fact just to walk through that door, because he can't even stop you, even though he'll pretend that he can. Go across the road up there and go into their house. Most of us just can't believe it can be done that simply, because we've believed our master, doubt. And it's even worse than that. You are weak in moral power, in slavery to doubt, and you're controlled by the habits of your life of sin. So you've been doing all this bad all your life, and he says, you know, even if you go there, you won't last very long, because they don't have good food like I do. You can't listen to the music you want to. You can't dress like you want to. You know, the more you think about it, it's actually more fun here. And he says, you say it's fun, but it's not. You're a hard taskmaster. Because we're controlled by the habits of our life, aren't we? In so many ways. Your promises, so this is where we just want to get to this bit now. Your promises and resolutions, like New Year's resolutions, are like ropes of sand. What is this imagery trying to portray like a rope of sand? We all know what a shower is. So here's a bucket, and it's not filled with water, but it's filled with sand. You put a hole underneath it, and here you are standing. And if you put a hole in it, what's going to happen? The sand's going to run out. And if you just looked at it, it would look like a rope, like a continuous rope. And what you do is with that rope, it's running down here, and you grab hold of it. And what happens as soon as you grab hold of it? It's nothing. It's an illusion. There's no rope there. Yeah? Because it's just pieces of grains of sand. It's nothing there. And that's the imagery that he's trying to bring. Your promises of doing good, of changing your habits, of changing your life, are like ropes of sand. You cannot control your thoughts, your impulses, your affections. Where's all that stuff? You can't control any of those things. Can you control the bully? Mm-mm. The knowledge of your broken promises and forfeited pledges weakens your confidence in your own sincerity and causes you to feel that God cannot accept you. But you need not despair. Who is she speaking of? Christians or non-Christians? Everybody agree? I think he's speaking about Christians. Because it says, How do I make the surrender of myself to God? You desire to give yourself to him, but you are weak in moral power, enslaved to doubt, and controlled by the habits of your life of sin. Your promises and resolutions like ropes of sand. You cannot control your thoughts and impulses, your affections. The knowledge of your broken promises and forfeited pledges to God weakens your confidence in your own sincerity and causes you to feel that God cannot accept you. But you need not despair. So either it's a Christian who's going through this bad time, or it's someone who wants to go to God. Either way, it's the same thing. And they don't believe that it's going to work. Because they keep on making these promises, and they keep on breaking their promises. How many of us have done that? You make a promise to God, you make a resolution to change your life, and then it lasts for a few days, and then you go back to your old ways, like a dog to its vomit. But she says you need not despair. And then she's going to say this, what you need to understand. Where's understanding? Here. So I want to say, the problem that most of us are experiencing, the reason why our Christian walks are not working as they should, they're not working properly, is because of a lack of understanding. We don't actually understand the mechanics of salvation. And that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to understand the mechanics of how salvation works. And it has to be an intellectual understanding. If you're into health reform, you know this is common sense. Everybody knows you need a certain amount of calories to live. If you eat half the calories that your body needs, you'll eventually emaciate and die. Yeah? So everybody knows you have to eat. In fact, your body's so powerful and strong, you will just eat. You can't live forever and a day by starving yourself. Your body will just make yourself eat. But the problem is, people don't know what to eat. Yeah, that's our biggest problem, because it's a matter of this issue here. We don't actually know what to eat, because we don't understand what's good and bad for us, because there's so many confusing messages. And Adventists, above all people on this earth, we should have a clear, unequivocal message of how we're supposed to take care of our bodies. But the problem is, in Adventism, what we've done is, we've stopped looking to God, and we've gone to man, to find out how we're supposed to take care of these bodies. And that's why we've got so many confusing messages in the church about how we're supposed to eat and how we're not supposed to eat. How we're supposed to proportion our foods, how many times we eat a day, so many things. It's all a matter of understanding, and that's what this person's problem is. He says, what you need to understand is that there's things that have gone wrong. And now she's going to tell you what you need to understand. You need to understand the true force of the will. She's going to tell you what the true force is. This is the governing power in the nature of man. What does it mean to govern? To rule. So in the nature of man is threefold. Higher power, lower power. The higher power is in two sections, mind and will. What's the governing power? What's the one that's the boss?
The will.
The will is. You know, when I say that, and you'll think about it, you say, that's obvious, isn't it? But I guarantee you, most of us, even in this room, most of us don't live that way. We're not actually ruled and governed by our will. Who's governing us? It's this. We eat at the wrong time, we eat the wrong food, we speak the wrong words. Now you're feeling, where we say, I feel angry, two emotions, I feel angry, so what am I going to do? My facial expressions are going to change, my voice tones are going to change, and I'm going to say something. And then I'm going to turn around and say, you know what? I don't know how that happened. It was a mistake. In fact, it was an accident. I didn't mean it. Or, if my name was Aaron, and your name was Moses, you're going to say, where did this cow come from? And I'm going to say, I have no idea. There was this fire and it just kind of sprang out of the fire. I don't know how it happened. And that's what we do, isn't it? We just say, I don't know how this happened. What was I thinking? You know, after 20 years of being Adventist and you've put on 28 pounds, you think, I don't know how that happened. I don't know how my body changed shape. It just happened. It's a mystery. And it's not, is it? I mean, it's all a science. It's all a science. So what we need to understand is the science of salvation. And it begins by understanding one thing. What is it that we just read? The one thing that you need to understand above everything else is the true force of the will. And if we held on to that and actually practice that thought, practice that concept, that truth, our lives would be transformed. Because what it would stop you doing is making excuses for your behaviour. So when you get your buttons pushed by your child, you know, a 10-year-old child, I shouldn't say 10, 12-year-old child can bring down a fully grown man. Did you know that? Easily. Can bring down a fully grown man. And it doesn't take much to do that. They can do it in a few seconds. They can destroy a human being. Easily. They have that much power. Or do they?
Yes.
Or do they? No, they don't. That's the thing. They don't. They don't have that power if we understand the true force of the will. Because the only buttons that they can push are these ones here.
As if we empower them. As if we empower them to.
Yes. Exactly that. They push these buttons here. They push your passions. And you become angry. And then you say something and you say, I don't know how that happened. And we know how it happened because it's all a science. What we need to understand is the true force of the will. That if we get this power and keep it in its proper place, we become unassailable. And in all of that, did we read about Christ once? Christ wasn't even in that story yet. It all talks about the true force of the will. And his will, you, or his will, God. It's us, it's not God. Because it's man. The nature of man is threefold. It was given to us by God. And this is the true governing force in the nature of a human being. This is all within the realms of a human being. If we understand one thing, that this was given to us to control us, we would be able to get to a place where we can stop making excuses about all of our conduct and all of our behaviour. This is how you can get, do you call them couch potatoes here? Yeah? This is how you can get a couch potato, 45-year-old man, 65-year-old woman, totally out of shape, disease-ridden, arthritic, and within Maybe if they weren't asked, maybe if they were arthritic, it might take a bit longer. We'll go with the couch potato 45-year-old man. In 6 months, you can get this man running a marathon. In 6 months, it doesn't take much longer than 6 months. And he could be obese in a really serious way. He could also have diabetes. And within 6 months, you can get this man doing a marathon. And how do you do that? It's all understanding the true force of the will. It's not the legs. Marathon running's got nothing to do with your legs or your body. If you watch a marathon, you see all the different types of people. You've got all these different body shapes, ages. Our bodies are not the problem. Our physical framework, the house in which we live, it's not the problem unless you've done really severe damage to it. It's repairable. Most of the damage is repairable. Maybe all of it. But if we don't understand the true force of the will, there's nothing we can do. And what I want to suggest is, if you watch a marathon, I'm not saying to watch marathons, 99% of those people are not Christians. They're not Christians. So how did they do what we don't seem to have the ability to do? Now, we can't even control what sits on our plate. If I said tomorrow, let's all start a marathon training, we'd say, oh, I can't do that. It's impossible. You would go and get aches and pains, and you say, this is not working. After a week, we just give up. But worldlings, if I can call them that, Gentiles, they seem to be managing to do that. What have they understood that we don't understand? The true force of the will. That's what they've understood. And they don't even get any help from God. You don't see many testimonies, oh, I run this marathon through the strength of God. You don't hear those testimonies. It's people who have got ill and diseased and they're sick and tired of their lifestyles and they want to correct themselves. Or someone wants to do some good deed for charity or something, help because their wife died of, say, cancer, and they want to do cancer support, so he trains. But most of those stories, it's very rare that you hear that God was in that story. So the only point I want to make on that issue is the true force of the will can be tamed and understood and used without God. So, what is the part of God? What does he do? It's going to tell us in the next sentence. Everything depends upon the right action of the will. The power of choice God has given to men. So I think that confirms what I'm saying. The power of choice God has given to men. We are required to exercise that. So it's no good you saying, Lord, when you give me the strength to run a marathon, I'll do it. It'll never work that way. If you're going to say to God, Lord, there's that donut, I know I shouldn't eat it, you know I shouldn't eat it. When you give me the strength to stop eating donuts, and I've got a belly out here, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm not healthy, I've got diabetes. When you give me the strength, then I'll stop. That's not how it works. We have to take control of ourselves, and in the army they use a phrase, at least in the UK, they say you need to man up. And if you have a phrase like that here, you need to take control of yourself and be a man or a woman. I don't mean to be, it's your gender. The power of choice God has given to men, it is theirs to exercise. We're supposed to exercise this will, and if you exercise, what happens? Get strong. If you don't feed this, what happens? It gets weaker. Yep. So this gets weaker, this gets stronger once you exercise. And this helps with this issue of power of habit. Once you get into good habits, they have a powerful effect, both for good and bad. But there's a big problem, and it's in the next sentence. So we can do all of that, but you cannot change your heart. Here's the heart. The heart is the flesh, it's the lower passions. So here it is here. You cannot change this. That's the problem. You can't change that. So what you need to do is get Christ to sit on this throne. And when he sits on the throne, then what happens? He begins to work on the heart. So, let me ask you a question. Who of you eats pork? No one? Who of you eats pork?
Who eats pork?
Okay. No.
I'll
I know
be
my sister
honest,
does.
I've eaten my share of it.
And so have I. We can have a debrief and see who ate the most. I don't know who. Actually, I don't know who would win. So we don't eat pork generally, yeah. Who here commits adultery? Don't answer. I'm going to assume no one. So I know this isn't directly in the Ten Commandments, and this one is directly in the Ten Commandments. Let me do another one. Who keeps the Sabbath? Or who breaks the Sabbath? No one. So all I'm suggesting is this. Upon the testimony of two, a thing is established. Yeah? So if we can keep this law, and we can keep this law, how many laws can we keep? All of them. Okay? So it's the Sabbath today, and none of us committed adultery today. So if we didn't commit adultery today, can we hold and not commit adultery tomorrow? Yeah? If we can do it one day, we can do it another day. If you can do it 2 days, could you do it 3 days? If you could do it 3 days, could you do it for the rest of your mortal life? And immortal life. Yeah? So what I want to suggest is, if you can keep law, even just once, you can keep it twice. Yeah? If you can keep it twice, you can keep it 3 times. All it is, it's an exercise of the will. Yeah? That's all you need to do. You need to educate someone, say, by the way, Sabbath keeping, regard the edges, sunset to sunset. Then you tell them the rules and regulations, no cooking, no speaking your own words. You wear a special dress code, you wear your Sabbath clothes, perhaps you go to church or something like that. So you tell them all the rules and everybody can just follow them, yeah? Now you ask most children, many teenagers, do they follow all of these rules? For sure, if they're under the guardianship of their parents. But what's the problem with them? They're not happy, are they? No, yeah, of course but some adults aren't either. Yeah? So we can keep all the rules, but we're not happy doing them. So what I want to suggest is this, that we can keep pork. By the way, you know how many vegans there are in the world? There are more vegans who are Gentiles than there are Adventists. Yeah? So they're all not eating meat. In whose strength? In their own strength. And we don't eat pork. In whose strength? In our own strength. How many couples, Gentiles, aren't committing adultery? They're happily married. Millions. Millions. How many Adventists don't commit adultery? Millions. Whose strength are these Gentiles or these atheists doing it in? Their own strength. And we would not commit adultery in our own strength. And a Sabbath day. Let's call it, if you're of another faith, and you keep Wednesday afternoons holy. Yeah? Or you pray 5 or 6 times a week. Or you go to a special meeting once a week. All of that is done outside of Christ. And they can maintain it for a lifetime through generations. They're doing it all in their own strength, and so can we. So what I'm suggesting is, all of this law keeping can all be done in our own strength at an intellectual level. But the problem is, if you do that, will you have this up and down experience? Like one day I kept the law and one day I didn't? No. Because you can keep the law every day. If you can do it once, you can do it twice. If you do it twice, you can do it every day. The problem is this, that, let's go with this one here. You can keep all of this law, but you won't be happy. And how many times have we said, don't like going to church because it's boring. Sabbath, I want to do my own thing. I can't wait till Sabbath ends. I'll stick to the rules, because if I don't stick to the rules, I'm not going to go to heaven. But I'm not happy doing it. And where does happiness live? In here, in the heart. So let's read it again. It says, you cannot change your heart. So this is the problem. If you want to be happy being a Christian, what do you need to do? You need to get rid of the lower passions off this throne and put Jesus there. And once Jesus is here in the heart, because this is, I'll put it here like Jesus is here, Jesus is controlling the heart now. What can he make you do that you can't do by yourself? He can make you happy to do what? Keep the Sabbath or adultery. Or, he can make you happy keeping the law. So there's a twofold work. There's a work for us to do, and there's a work for God to do. What's our part? Keeping law. Straightforward. What's God's part? Making us happy to keep law. And it's really that simple. It really is that simple. If we understood the true force of the will, much of this confusion that we have about Christianity and how it operates and how it works would melt away. And this is the reason why there's so much sin in our church, in Christianity in large. The reason there's so much sin is because people don't understand the true force of the will. And who do they blame? It wasn't my fault. They blame others. Or, eventually, the blame goes up to, because they blame others. You know, if God hadn't given me this husband, if I'd hadn't been married to a nicer husband, I wouldn't have all of these problems, would I? So whose fault is it? What did Adam say? You know, if you hadn't given me this wife, I wouldn't have been in this mess. And Eve said, if you hadn't put the snake in the garden, we wouldn't have got into trouble. Who are they blaming? The blame always shifts up and goes to God. And what we need to do is recognise who to blame for what. And who should we be blaming? I'm going to say this. Don't blame yourself. Because it says this. What you need to understand. So most of us are ignorant. Most of us have never been taught the ABCs of how salvation works and how Christianity is supposed to operate, because we don't know how man was put together. So if you want to blame someone, blame your teachers. Who are your teachers? Let's not say. No, I'm not your teacher. I mean those other teachers. Priests and the rabbis. And so, and all of this stuff has been happening deliberately. Satan's, a masterful controller of the affairs of humanity. So we get to a stage that nobody understands how human beings are constructed and put together. And I don't mean physiologically. I mean spiritually, the nature of man. And if we understood that, and it's not difficult, it's only 3 parts, and it's really a tension between this one and this one. If you understand the true force of the will, and you allow Jesus to take the throne of this part of your being, it all becomes plain sailing. Because not only will you keep law, but you'll enjoy or love keeping law. And most Christians don't live like that. What we do is what the world does. It's called gritting your teeth. And if you're in a bad relationship, whether it's at work, whether it's with your sibling, whether it's with your parent or child, but more often than not in a marriage, you get to know each other really well. And you know when an argument's about to happen, don't you? And what do? We grit our teeth. When our wife irritates us and we say, Lord, why did you give me this wife? It's your fault. But you know what? I'm going to bear it. I'm going to bear my cross. This great cross that I have to bear, which is my wife, who only a few years ago was the apple of your eye. And you thought nothing bad could come from this person, suddenly becomes this ogre. Now you hate her. And she's this great cross that you've got. What do? You grit your teeth and you don't argue with her when she provokes you to wrath. You get home in the evening after work, and there she is, after a hard day's work, giving you more aggravation, and you grit your teeth. And you grit your teeth Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. By Friday, the balloon's about to what? Burst. Because you've had enough. A week full of abuse is more than a man can take. So it bursts, then you think, Lord, what have I done? I've let you down again. My promises are like ropes of sand. You go on your knees and you ask for forgiveness and you start the cycle all over again. And isn't that what most of our lives are like? If not our lives, the lives of our children or our friends or the people we fellowship with. And that's how most people are operating in their Christianity. And what I want to suggest is God never intended it to be that way. What he wants us to do is when a confrontational situation happens, and it could be with a donut, it could be with your child, your spouse, your pastor, your next door neighbour. When that conflict happens and you feel like gritting your teeth, what should you do? Pray for what? Pray for willpower to get through it? No. Pray for a change of heart. Say, Lord, this fleshly heart is turning back into a stone. Right now, not in a moment, right now in this confrontation, please take the crown and sit here and keep my heart stayed upon you so that I can get through this experience with joy and pleasure and peace. And once you've done that, 5 minutes later, what's going to happen? It's going to go all over again. Sometimes with the same person, sometimes a different experience. And Christians think, I thought this stuff's supposed to work, isn't it? You give your heart to Christ, and he gets me through this thing, and then 2 minutes later, it happens again. And I thought I'd given myself to Christ. And why am I feeling angry again? Why are all these emotions coming up? I thought I'd give myself to Christ. And then we say, you know what? Maybe Christianity doesn't work for me. It works for these other people, but not for me. I'm not the Christian type. What we need to understand is the dynamics of salvation. Do we all understand about drugs? Yeah? You start taking drugs once or twice, what happens? You're hooked. You get dependency. Yeah? Now, God is like that. God is like that. He could say to you, you know what? You know this anger management problem you've got? You come and give it to me once. Say, Lord, I surrender all my anger. You take it to me. Sit on the throne of my heart so I'm never angry again. He says, yep, done. Tomorrow, you ever going to feel angry again? Never. Because he's there, sitting there. Then you've got another one, jealousy. Lord, keep on getting jealous of all these things. I'm jealous of my neighbour. They've got a good car. Take this away from me. He takes it away. Once you've gone through all your checklist, you can do that in a day, by the way, because you go through all these emotions in a day. Tomorrow, do you need Jesus? Why? He's already taken all of these things from you.
To keep us from getting it back.
Ah, but if he's already kept it from you, you don't need to ask for it again, because you're never going to have that temptation again. In Christianity, we call it once,
Saved, always saved.
always saved. Do we believe in that theology?
No.
All Adventists will say no, but most of us want to live that way. We think that we got angry and we say, Lord, please help me to stop being angry with my child. It's not good. I don't know what it says. I shouldn't do it. I surrender this to you. Then 5 minutes later, what are you feeling? Angry. And we want this, don't we? We say, I thought we just surrendered it to you. Why doesn't it work? I'm suggesting it was by design. Because God is like a drug. He wants us to be dependent upon him all the time. So this anger that you had with your child, in that moment you say, Lord, take this anger away, and he'll take it away. But in 5 minutes, when your child gets you angry again, what do you need to do? Go back to the drug and take another dose. So the reason that we don't have this once saved, always saved, we don't have these emotions that are forever taken away, is because he wants us to depend upon him for how long? Forever. Will this stop when we leave earth and go into heaven? It never will. you think you could get angry in heaven? If someone pushes your buttons hard enough? Of course you could.
Satan did.
Yeah. Now, some people think you can't get angry in heaven. You can't be jealous in heaven because there's no temptation in heaven. But you don't need some external temptation. As my brother said, Lucifer sinned perfectly well in heaven. And who tempted him to sin? Nobody. So you don't. So some of our concepts, when we think about them, they don't have integrity to them. So what I'm saying is this surrendering of the heart to Christ, where he sits on the throne, isn't a one-off affair. Because what happens is that the next time you get into a conflict or a situation, this, can I call it the old man of sin? Can we use that kind of concept? He can just come back again, he can resurrect. And then you have to crucify him again and again and again. And it's God's will that it happens over the same issue. Why? Is it because we're bad? No. Is it because he's weak? God being weak? No. Is it because Satan's so powerful? No. It's because God wants us to depend upon him all the time, forever. And he designed it this way, that our lives would just be one long prayer. From morning to evening, from day to day, 24/7. When you sleep, when you just come out of consciousness, you're praying to him. When your first thoughts in the morning, and this isn't going on your knees a formal prayer, you're just waking out of sleep, and now your thoughts are turned to him. In preparation for the day that's coming, in the thoughts that you had during the night, in reflections of what happened the day before. He wants us to continuously think on him. And if we do that, he'll continually keep our hearts subdued. And not only will we keep law, but what? It will be a joy to us. It will be a pleasurable experience. So there's one more thing I want to talk about, the nature of man. And you've let me get away with this. We've spoken about the mind, the will, and the physical. And there's one more part of the mind. It's part of the higher powers that we haven't spoken about. And it's a bit of a kind of a tricky one. What is it? Another part of a human being. We all know about it. When I write it out, you say, oh yeah, of course I know that. It begins with C.
Conscience?
Yeah. I want us to think, what is the conscience? What do we think the conscience is? First, before we do that, where did the conscience come from? From God. Who owns your conscience?
I do.
You do or God does?
I say God does.
He didn't give it to you?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah? So it's yours. You can do what you want with it. Yeah? You can get an iron and you can burn it and destroy it. You can kill it. You can do what you want with it. It's yours to do with what you want. Yeah? Just like your stomach is and your mouth is. You can do what you want with it. You're a free moral agent. What is conscience then? Let's have a definition of what conscience is.
Right or wrong? When you've done something wrong, you feel bad about it, or
Okay, so when you've done something bad, you know about it.
yeah, you know, yeah.
And who said something here?
Right or wrong, you know.
Yeah. It's the ability to know or discern right from wrong. And it's inbuilt in us. It's inbuilt. You don't need to be a Christian. You don't need to have read the Bible. When you're born, it's already inbuilt in you. Now, it might need some help. It might need some training, because a child doesn't know everything. But I'm suggesting, and I think our own experience will confirm this, that it's the ability to know right and wrong, and it's inbuilt in us. Everybody knows what is right and what is wrong. Now, it can be corrupted. You can live in a society that says, you go and attack a man, chop his head off and eat his brain, and that's really good. Cannibalism. And you can be indoctrinated to think that's good, and that might be right. But is that right? Of course it's not right. No? But generally those same people would know that parents are supposed to take care of their children. That Even if husbands have 2 or 3 wives, they still have wives. Yeah? You don't have one man who can take anybody's wife that he wants to at any time and think it's all going to be okay. There are certain principles, certain ideas that are inbuilt in humanity. We know what's right and what's wrong, generally. Okay? So, there's this conscience, it's the ability to know what's right and wrong. But not only is it the ability to know what's right and wrong, what else does it have? If you're doing wrong, what would your conscience do or say to you?
Feel guilt.
Yeah. It would start flashing, saying, that's wrong. And now you have these thoughts or feelings of guilt. Yeah? Or we could call it conviction. Guilt or conviction, yes? And where did that come from? Did you need to read the Bible? Do you need to ask God? Do you say, God, convict me of sin? No. It's already there, inbuilt. So, do we need to make a break or are we okay? Break? Okay, so let's have a break. And what we want to start talking about is the gospel. We'll talk a little bit about the gospel now that we've dealt with some of these issues and the importance of them. Let's pray. Father God, we want to thank you, Lord, because we were fearfully and wonderfully made. As we study the human form and how we were put together, Lord, we marvel at your goodness and your mercy, that you were willing to create us in your image, so that in an understanding of our own frame, we can understand more about who you are and what makes you happy and what makes you sad. Lord, may it be our will to please you and to bring you joy and happiness by doing what you want us to do. Help us to experience this, Father, so not only would you be happy, but we too would find peace and happiness and joy in your service. We ask and pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.